Hi, everybody. Welcome back for part 3 of our 3-part session with Kelvin from NILG.AI. And do have a look at his YouTube channel. Do have a look at the first 2 parts of this series. And let's crack on with this 3rd part. It's a fantastic conversation. Maybe this is a good point to go to the in-house versus API and the whole sort of, now that we're sort of talking about it there, that as you say, there was a lot of people were building their own AI, and we could also talk about that, about how, is it feasible? How big a company do you need to be able to build your own AI? Do you need these massive amounts of data and flops of capacity, et cetera? Or can you just, I've been general counsel of companies where we were developing our own AI and we didn't have billions of funding, sadly, but it's sort of possible. So one bit is doing it yourself, like how feasible that is for companies. And then the using an API, and then maybe your experience of how that market's changed and how that practice has changed in-house versus API.
Yes, for sure. So how big you have to be to train AI? To train an AI, not that big if you are just training these more traditional machine learning models, like for classification, like answering yes or no,
Yeah.
or the probability of somebody leaving. Actually, we have like this mastermind community that I call the AIpreneur Circle, and we meet every month. And the last session was about churn prediction. Okay, and I wanted to prove that everybody could do churn prediction with AI. So I built a churn prediction model for our company, and we are a boutique consulting company, right? So it's not that large, and the model was pretty good. So for these kind of simplistic answers like binary outcomes, etc., I would say anybody could build an AI model on their laptop or close to their laptop. Okay?
Yeah.
Even like computer vision models, like saying if a patient has cancer or not, up to a certain amount of data, you will be okay with a regular computer. And that's different nowadays with LLMs. Okay.
Yeah.
Because LLMs are massive, right? They are super huge. They are good at what they do. I mean, off the shelf. It's not like you need to. It's not like you need to train a very custom LLM to answer your specific task. They are good at almost everything around text.
Yeah.
While for more traditional tasks like predicting somebody is going to churn, or predicting if a machine will fail, or forecasting your sales for your next quarter, you will train a custom model, right? For text interactions, what I'm advising now is just use an API model, okay? An API version of it, for several reasons. One is because, it's like a pain to host these models and this infrastructure unless you are large enough and you have a dedicated team to build this. And if you're a startup or if you're a small company, you don't have the. Sometimes you don't even have the resources to develop the website in-house. So even less to keep data governance principles and AI models. And the second one is that it's very mature. Okay, so it's something that it sounds like already a massive change and it's super consolidated area, but no. I mean, 2023 we had like GPT-3, which didn't handle images and didn't handle internet searches or whatever. And 1 year later, we have like multimodal models with way deeper understanding of text. So if you put all your efforts, so if you're not an AI company and you put all your efforts on training these AI models, and in 3 months or 6 months, what is out there, it's better.
Yeah.
So it's like a bad
Absolutely. It makes a lot of sense on the API bit. So going on to the API bit then, when you're using an API, what are the risks of using that API? What are the recommendations you have about how to use that, the guardrails around information that you put in and out? And then afterwards, maybe we can talk about, once we've set that up with that context, how do you then fine tune, and who needs to fine tune? How often is that relevant? So maybe at the beginning, what are the risks of using the API and how do you address that and sharing the data?
I would say that the very same risks that apply to using an API applies to sending your data to a contractor.
Right.
So once they have the data, they can do whatever they want with that data. They can do. Whether they should or not, it's a different question, right? And whether they comply with the terms and conditions that you have contractually agreed to comply, it's a different question. But they have the data. Okay?
Yes. Yeah.
So when you have an external API, you are trusting that third party that they will follow the principles that are written in your contract. Okay. With OpenAI, basically, if you're using the paid version or the API version, they don't use the data for training. They only keep it for 30 days, just for in case there is any compliance issue. But after 30 days, they remove it. And if it's a very sensitive domain, you can talk with them so they don't even store it for 30 days. So there are certain rules, same things for the other providers. Okay, so read the contract, okay, because it's
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
the same that you will have with any contractor or any supplier.
Absolutely. Great point.
You are giving the data. Okay, then there are basically two ways of passing the right information or to make the LLM act in the way you want. Okay, one way is fine tuning, which is basically passing a bit more of data or your type of data with your type of answers in the supervised way. You mentioned supervised and unsupervised. So you
Great.
supervise the LLM to say, when I have this type of data, I want you to answer in this way.
Right.
And that's useful when you cannot easily explain to the LLM what you expect as an answer.
Yeah.
For example, tone of voice. Like I want the LLM to generate content in the way I speak or with the words I tend to use. That is not easy to write as instructions, right? But it has a risk, which is you're exposing this data to the third party. This data is being put into the model, and these LLMs have the capacity of memorizing data. So that data will be there, okay, or could be there, potentially there at some points. So at some points, the model could reveal that data in a sense that if you are asking about this point, so the prediction between this point and this point will interpolate this point. But if you're asking about exactly this point, maybe it already provides the answer around this point, right?
Yeah. It's an interesting one because this is, I mean, the contracts have all, I mean, OpenAI has changed its model, iterated its model so rapidly and its practices so rapidly. It was almost like releasing a tiger into the wild, going, yeah, we know it can be dangerous. Let's see what happens. We'll put guardrails in when we work out how many people it's eaten or whatever. But so they've definitely put more protections in, and as you go up through their contractual ladder, you can get more comfort. And on the fine tuning, it is right because the model has to be retaining in order to be able to come back with that tone of voice or to come, as you say, that supervised. It's interesting that is the supervised learning. But you're going, when I ask you this, I want you to reply with this sort of thing. That's super interesting.
Yeah, but then there is the other format. Okay, so you have fine tuning, and then you have something that I prefer, if possible, which is passing the information as part of the context, as part of the instructions that you use for the LLM. Because now it's not training, is the inference part. Okay, so you're not memorizing things. You are just applying the inference part of the model where the model is static and it's not memorizing things. Okay, so there is no risk at the modeling part. Of course, you have the risk at the compliance of the supplier, but the risk is basically if the model on the outputs reveals some part of this specific input that you decided.
Yeah.
But it's way easier to manage because now you could say, only pass context on the instructions that the end user could read or could observe.
But it's not going to be retained because you're not fine tuning. You're just basically,
At least not by the model, maybe by the system as a whole.
Yes.
If they don't comply. Exactly, but at least not by the model.
No, that's fantastic. And so in terms of the data you need for fine tuning, in a way, what you're saying now is if you can put the context into your input, into your instruction, and presumably you could automate that as well, but it's make that a lot easier. But that means that really you need a lot of data to maybe train one of these generally applicable systems, but actually for the fine tuning for the input output part, you don't need a ton of data to fine tune it.
Yes. For the inference part, you can even, I mean, we have done very basic stuff. I mean, very complex stuff with very basic amount of data, like 100 data points, 500. You can fine tune it with a very small amount of data. And for the context part, you just need, a couple of examples. Actually, you cannot pass too many examples because that will get super expensive. So it's like these models are converging to needing less data once they are training, because now it's like this. Let's say you have a baby that only knows how to choose shapes, okay, circles and squares and triangles, right? It's only good to that type of data, okay?
Yeah.
To that type of task, okay? And if you need it to do a different task, you will need to put a lot of training, a lot of data into it, right? In the baby. So if you want him to be able to read, you have to train the baby a lot, right? To read. But if you already have a PhD, or maybe not a PhD, because when we get into a PhD, we only can do a single task. But when you get to somebody that is very resourceful and knows a lot of things, they can handle all tasks more or less properly. And if you give him a proper manual on what you want on this specific task, they will be able to do it. This is because the model is becoming more general purpose and has a
Mm-hmm.
good set of instructions for everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that is what is happening with LLMs. They are more general purpose than the previous models we had to detect cancer or to detect churn.
Then coming on, we talked about attacks and security. What are AI specific security issues and attacks,
Yeah.
and how should we look at that? I think one of the things I've maybe foreshadowing your answer a little bit from our previous conversation just now is you've got to think of it obviously as it's part of your IT estate and your technology estate. So all the things that you normally look at, you've mentioned a lot about look at the provider and all this sort of thing. But in terms of the security aspects itself from AI, what are the specific AI risks?
I will say we have more technical risks around how good is the model. For example, if the model is pretty bad and you are making very sensitive decisions with that model, then it's a big risk. And that
Yeah.
goes more into the acting part,
Yeah.
which is, let's say you are allowing the model, and this is not necessarily security, but it's also important, which is, let's say you're allowing your model to decide the discount that the end user will get.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you allow this model to make a discount from 0% to 100%, or even more than 100. Okay, like
Right.
200% discount, so you owe
Yeah.
money to the end user. So that's a risk, right? And it's the risk of what decisions you are allowing the model to take and how you are constraining and putting boundaries around that decision. Okay, and that is mainly about it's more of a technical risk of the predictions, right? But then we have more human risks around this, around AI, for example, bias and
Yeah.
ethical aspects. Actually, there's this book which is very good about that topic, which is
Weapons
Weapons
of
of
Math
Mass
Destruction.
Destruction.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's basically when the AI, and this one is also about that, and human compatible. Those are 3 books I will recommend on that direction.
Fantastic.
Which is when the AI is maximizing for an objective that could affect something else. Okay.
Yes.
For example, that could affect biases around a certain group, or that could affect. And since these AIs have a capacity of spreading out decisions so fast, their impact could be massive. So
Yeah.
you need to have a proper feedback loop to measure if you are contradicting some goals that you could have, or you are affecting some goals that you could have. Then, of course, we have all the issues around privacy of the data you pass for training and during inference, because it could generate all this type of predictions that reveal part of the data.
Yep.
Then you have, I will say, also around the ethical part of usage of AI, which is before we control the AI models and we train the AI models with our data, so we know it complies with our principles.
Yeah.
But now we are more into relying on third-party AI models, like API
Yes.
AI models.
Yeah.
That we're trained with data that maybe is not following our principles and ethical. It doesn't follow our organizational culture.
Yeah.
So it can deviate too fast
Yeah.
into things that do not follow our brand, and that
Yep.
will be a risk. And then I will say there is another risk, which is a problem of control. Okay, let's say you have an employee monitoring quality assurance on a manufacturing line. So basically, this employee is taking each and every object, inspecting it, and saying this one is good, this one is good, this one is good, and you have a certain throughput. You can process 1,000 items per day.
Yeah.
And now you put an AI there, inspecting everything, right? And only when the AI says there is an issue, you pass that to a human, and the human validates, and if there is an issue, it removes the object from the line. And now you say, well, the human will only need to validate the ones that are wrong, not every case. So I can produce at 100 times faster, right? I can have 100 times larger throughput. So you have less time to prevent a problem.
Yes.
If the AI is not working well, right?
Yeah.
If the accuracy is lower than you expected, if something changed in your pipeline and now the product's coming in a different color and the AI is not able to recognize these errors, then you will have less time to stop the employee that previously was just assessing 100 cases and saying, these ones are wrong. Now you are processing 100,000 objects per minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have a problem of control because you are 10x or 100x your capacity, right?
So this brings us very much to the issues of relying on outputs and then how you manage these risks. So you've sort of intimated a lot of this in this last answer about what the various different risks are. So how would you bring it together in terms of how you should look at relying on those outputs, the issues that can come, the safeguards of addressing those, the sort of processes you've seen companies put in place. We've talked about guardrails and safeguards. What sort of things are those?
Okay, so AI is good at processes that have uncertainty. And if you can handle uncertainty, AI is a good point. That process is a good point to put an AI, okay? Because
Right.
AI is a way of lowering uncertainty with
Yeah.
predictions, with more
Yeah.
data, okay? You have more
Yeah.
data, you will make better decisions because you have less uncertainty. If you are risk adverse on this process and you don't want any form of uncertainty, AI is not for you on that process, okay? That's the
Mm.
first thing. So
Yeah.
only apply it on processes that could have certain levels of uncertainty that you
Really
cannot
good.
solve,
Right. Right. Yeah.
right? Then once we embrace uncertainty, if you can, I will put a human in the loop, at least until we trust the technology and we know its capabilities. And my customers get very sad when I tell them, yes, we are optimizing all of this, but we are putting a human in the loop for some time at least to validate everything that goes on with the
Yeah.
system. They get like, but it's like, it's what you have to do because it's very mature so far. So it's something that
Yeah.
will evolve. We don't know yet at what extent it can handle certain cases, especially because we are now handling more complex tasks. It's not just
Mm-mm.
cancer, not cancer on an image. It's a wide variety of things that the
Yeah.
user
Yeah.
put. So put a human in the loop if possible. At least if you cannot put a human in the loop, at least track the performance. Okay.
Yeah.
And keep a feedback loop there.
Yeah.
Okay. Then of course try to whatever you can prevent programmatically, like I'm expecting a number and now you're splitting out words. That shouldn't happen. Okay, like this kind
Yeah.
of basic controls. And the final part that most people forget about, well, the two final things, but they come together, are the social contract you have with the user. So who is accountable for
Mm.
for the decisions? Let's say a certain task that was done by a human is now done by an AI. Who is going to be accountable inside the
Yeah.
company for the output of that AI? Is
Yeah.
the IT department? Is the person that was before put in place there to work at that task and is not longer taking care of
Suddenly
that task?
everyone's running for the door. Not me, not me. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
So make sure you take some time to define the new who is accountable at this point for these
Mm-mm.
responses. And what comes typically what you will say as a company is we are not accountable for errors, is the end user. So the services provider is provided as is, and is the end user who is accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is the easiest way to circumvent this issue of
Yeah.
accountability. But then people forget to communicate this to the end user.
Yeah.
Okay. And the easiest way is you put a human in the loop, you decide who is accountable for the decisions taken based on this information, and then you communicate to the user that you are
Yeah.
not longer dealing with a human, you are dealing with an AI. And if you need a human at some point, please ask,
Yeah. I mean,
uh,
you've perfectly summarized in business friendly terms exactly the US executive order, the EU AI Act around having the human in the loop. And actually people forget about GDPR and Article 22, which really hits AI, particularly when the automated decision making, which includes profiling, and so many people do profiling, it's an easy one to forget. Particularly where that decision has a legal or similarly significant effect on the person. And again, it's like the high risk in the AI Act, and it's having a human in the loop. Why have a human in the loop if they don't process and monitor what's going on? So as you said quite rightly, it's all about monitoring, and is it expected, and what's the inputs, what are the outputs? Also having training for all of those people so they know what they should be expecting, what not, policies for them. And you've just said about explainability and transparency as well. So it's all, you did a fantastic business version of everything that's in the AI Act and the executive order. So it's fantastic. So you pointed out some books there, Kelwin. Could you just say those 3 books that you mentioned? If you could just hold them up and say those 3 books, because I think it'd be really
yes.
good.
So let me just check if I have the 3 here. Exactly. Weapons of mass destruction, human compatible, which
Human
is
compatible.
building artificial intelligence we can trust. And then it's human compatible that I have somewhere here. This one. Okay. From one of our godfathers in AI,
Fantastic.
Stuart Russell. That's
Fantastic.
also, but these are more, well, this one is pretty relevant nowadays because it's about creating feedback loops. And this one especially is more about the future. What happens if we have artificial general intelligence that gets mad
Yeah.
with us, right? So how to
Yeah.
prevent
Yeah.
that? But if I want to recommend, if I shall recommend two books around AI from a business perspective, I like the series from Ajay Agrawal of prediction machines
Yeah.
and then power and prediction. Those
Power
two,
and prediction
yeah,
machines. And
that's
then
more
the
for
others were
understand.
for understanding the business part of it.
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
economics part of the AI, like how
Yeah.
this could be game changing for business, and the others are more about potential problems that could arise.
And thank you so much. And any closing tips or messages on uh, people who are not technologists, who are coming to AI, having to maybe be involved in the AI governance, having to look at how do we use it in the business? Do we use it in the business? It's a big question, but and obviously that are important to look at your channel and to look at all your excellent videos as well. But any sort of closing tips?
Yeah, I will say if you are building an AI or if you are starting to use AI into any process, do not get too seduced by the technology part of it, by the techie part of it, which will be, model centric or data centric
Mhm.
AI. Focus on what we call business centric, which is people and processes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like how is the business going to absorb this new tool that will allow us to make better decisions? If you put
Fantastic.
your entire focus on decision making, how we are making better decisions for our processes and for our people, you get a much larger potential with AI than if you focus on the technology alone.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. Well, this has been, I knew this was going to be a fantastic
Yeah,
discussion. So thank you so much. And everybody, please do visit Kelvin's website and on the NILG.AI YouTube channel. It's really fantastic. It's doing super well, deservedly, and the videos are fantastic there. So thank you very much indeed for coming on Privacy Kitchen.
thank you, Robert.
That's the end of part 3 of our fantastic series with Kelwin Fernandes on demystifying AI. Do catch parts 1 and 2 if you haven't, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Privacy Kitchen. See you again soon.